Hi. My name's Walter Briggs. I walked into a store last week to buy an American flag, and the cashier laughed. She said, "People your age still care about stuff like this?" Then asked if I even remembered what country I was in. I didn't say a word. But the man behind me did, loud enough for everyone to hear. And after that, well, let's just say, no one laughed again. Have you ever been treated like you were invisible, in the very country you bled for? Ellipsis. I pulled into the parking lot around 4:45. It was the Friday before Memorial Day. No parades, no music, just me. Looking for a flag. One of those small ones, the kind you stick in a flower pot or tape to your mailbox. The one I had faded, wind-beaten, still standing, but the red had bled into the white. I found a new one in aisle 6. Right next to the helium balloons and 4th of July napkins with the cheap fireworks print. I didn't need any of that. Just the flag. I picked it up gently. Rolled it. Placed it in the cart like it meant something. Because it did. The checkout lines were packed. A dad was arguing over coupons. A teenage couple had 3 cases of soda and a frozen pizza. Someone's kid was throwing M&Ms on the floor. I waited, hands resting on the cart handle, just watching. The cashier at lane 4 had bright blue nails and a ponytail too tight for comfort. Her name tag read, Madison. She barely looked at me when it was my turn. Just scanned the cart, saw the flag, and let out this small laugh. "You still buy these?" She raised her brows. "Feels kinda vintage patriot, you know?" I didn't answer. Not with words. I looked at her, right in the eye. Not angry, just still. She blinked. Glanced down. Scanned the barcode with a quiet beep. The screen flashed $3.99. I reached into my wallet, folded leather, older than she was, and pulled out a 10. Set it on the counter. She slid the receipt and change across, not making eye contact. I didn't take them. The man behind me, black guy, mid-30s, clean jacket, steady voice, spoke up. "That man's the reason you get to laugh at that flag," he said. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. The words landed like a brick in the middle of aisle 4. Madison didn't respond. Didn't have to. The silence answered for her. I looked down. The flag still lay by the scanner. Neatly rolled, untouched. I left the money, left the receipt, and walked out. As I passed through the automatic doors, I heard the soft ding of the bell. And behind me, the shuffle of a flag slipping from the cart. It hit the floor. I didn't turn around. Didn't need to. I didn't come there for a fight. Didn't come for pity. Didn't even come to be seen. I came for a flag. And somehow, I left with something else. Something I didn't know I was still carrying. Until someone tried to laugh at it. When I got home, I didn't hang a flag. I sat by the window instead. And wondered if maybe I should have picked it up after all. Ellipsis. By the next morning, it had already made its way around town. Not the flag. The clip. 35 seconds. Grainy cell phone footage from the man behind me in the checkout line. A little shaky. But clear enough to catch the cashier's laugh. Her words. And me, standing there. Silent. And then, his voice. "That man's the reason you get to laugh at that flag." He posted it with no caption. Just 3 words. This really happened. By noon, it had 500 shares. By dinner time, a local news station had reposted it. They blurred my face. Didn't matter. People knew. I got a call around 7:30 that evening. "Grandpa, was that you?" Eli, my grandson, 11 years old, too smart for his own good. Voice trembling between excitement and something else. Something heavier. I didn't answer right away. Just said, "How was school today?" He paused. Everyone was talking about the video. Some people thought it was fake. But I knew it. I knew it was you. Another pause. "Why didn't you say anything to her?" I looked out the window. The sun was dipping behind the apartment complex across the street. "I've said enough in my life. Eli." He went quiet, then whispered. "Dad saw it too." I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. "Tell him I'm fine." I heard his voice go small. He's not mad, Grandpa. He just doesn't get it. Neither did most people, I wanted to say. But instead I said, "That's okay." After we hung up, I stayed at the kitchen table. The box was there, sitting in the same corner it had sat for 30 years. I pulled it toward me. The lid creaked. Inside, a bronze star. A faded photo of 5 boys in uniform, arms slung around each other. A ration card. A field map with a coffee stain shaped like Virginia. And a letter, unopened, dated 1972. I hadn't touched any of it since Mary died. She used to dust it off every Veterans Day. I used to tell her not to bother. Tonight, I opened it. The letter wasn't from her. It was from Frank Delaney, my CO. The last one still breathing when we left that jungle. His words hit like a steel-toed boot to the ribs. "If you're reading this, I'm gone, and you made it. Just don't forget what that cost. And don't let them forget, either." I folded it back slow, my hands steady even if my heart wasn't. Then I heard the door open. David, my son. He stood there with his arms crossed. Same way he did when he was a teenager. Same wall in the kitchen. Same silence. "I saw the video," he said flat. Then, "Was it necessary?" I looked at him, confused. "The flag?" He huffed. "The whole scene. It's all over Facebook. Mom would have hated that kind of attention." I stared at him. And for the first time in a long time, I said something I didn't plan. Maybe the problem is we stop paying attention to things that matter. His face tightened. He didn't reply. Just left the room. I didn't follow. Instead, I sat back down. Put the letter back in the box. Folded the photo. Ran my thumb along the edge of the map. Then I looked at the empty space on the wall above the kitchen sink. The place where our old flag used to hang. The one Mary would clip up each May. It had come down when she passed. Stayed down. But for some reason, tonight, I missed the way it used to sway when the window was cracked open just enough. I didn't know it yet, but the next morning, my grandson would do something that would change everything. Ellipsis. When I woke up, the sun was coming through the kitchen blinds. And there it was. A small flag. Waving gently from the railing of our second-floor balcony. It wasn't the one I left behind at the store. This one was newer, brighter. And it was taped to a wooden dowel, the kind from the school supply aisle. Not store-bought, homemade. I stepped out in my slippers, rubbed the sleep from my eyes, and opened the sliding door. Eli was standing there, in his hoodie, holding a roll of Scotch tape. He looked at me like he'd just done something brave. "I didn't want people to forget," he said. I didn't answer. Not because I didn't have anything to say, but because there was too much to say, and none of it fit in that moment. He pointed down. Across the parking lot. "You see that guy in 2B? He hung one, too." Sure enough, there was another flag taped to the window of apartment 2B. And another in 3C. And a small one sticking out of a potted plant on the stairs. In less than 24 hours, one flag had become 5. I looked at Eli. Still holding the tape like it was a torch. He didn't smile. He didn't expect praise. He just nodded once and walked back inside. I stayed out a little longer. The breeze was soft. And for a second, I remembered the feeling of standing on base. Before sunrise. Boots on gravel, air thick with quiet. The kind of silence you only recognize after you've survived chaos. Later that day, the doorbell rang. When I opened it, there was a delivery box on the welcome mat. No return label. Inside, a folded flag in a display case. Military issue. Heavy. Real. A handwritten note sat on top. "Mr. Briggs. On behalf of those who remember. Thank you. Lieutenant Marcus Chen." I sat down at the kitchen table. The same spot where I had opened the memory box the night before. Set the new case next to the old medals. Watched the light catch the glass. The house felt different now. Not louder, just fuller. Later, while Eli was doing homework, I heard his voice through the bedroom door. "Hey Dad, can I tell Grandpa's story for my class project?" David didn't answer right away. Then, flatly, "You can talk about the video. But don't get dramatic. It's not like he's some national hero." I didn't move. Didn't need to. It was the kind of comment that said more about him than me. And yet, even then, I wasn't angry. I was tired. That kind of tired you don't fix with a nap. The kind you carry. I made us grilled cheese for dinner. Didn't say much. David scrolled through his phone at the table. Eli chewed quietly, feet swinging off the chair. When we were done, I washed the dishes. Same routine. Same sink. Same silence. Until Eli said, "They're talking about you at school. People saw the flag on our balcony." I turned off the faucet. He looked up from the table. "They want to invite you to the Memorial Day assembly. To say something." I shook my head. "I don't give speeches, kid." He shrugged. "You don't have to. You already said something when you didn't take the change." That stopped me cold. He wasn't being clever. He wasn't trying to be poetic. He was just saying what he saw. That night, while Eli slept, I sat on the couch with the display case on my lap. I didn't open it. Didn't need to. I just looked at the flag inside. Folded tight, crisp lines. It wasn't the same kind of flag as the one on our balcony. This one was made for someone who didn't come home. But tonight, they both felt like they were waving for the same reason. The next morning, a letter arrived. Stamped with an army seal, and an invitation I wasn't ready for. Ellipsis. I stared at the envelope for 5 full minutes before I opened it. And even then, my hands didn't shake. But my chest sure did. It was thick paper. Off-white, sealed with the U.S. Army crest in gold. Not something you get in the mail unless they really mean it. Inside was a letter. Short, direct, polished like a dress uniform. Mr. Briggs, we humbly invite you to be an honored guest at this year's Memorial Day ceremony at Lincoln Park. Your presence has come to represent something powerful in this community. We would be honored if you'd speak. Lieutenant Marcus Chen, Public Affairs Officer, 143rd Infantry Regiment. I didn't move for a long time. Didn't know if I should feel angry. Or seen. Both, maybe. The flag case still sat on the table. I hadn't put it away since it arrived. I slid the lid open. The flag was perfectly folded, tight triangles. Corners crisp as a bootshine. Tucked in the bottom of the case was a name. Frank Delaney. My heart didn't skip. It dropped. Frank was the last man I spoke to before it all went black. We were pinned down in the rain. Mud so thick you could lose a boot in it. He threw himself over me when the second round hit. Told me, "If you make it out, don't waste it." And here it was, 49 years later. His name inside a flag that now sat in my kitchen. He made sure I didn't waste it. He left his name so I'd remember. Even if the world didn't. I told Eli the story that afternoon. The real one. Not the cleaned up version. Not the, "we got through it together" stuff. I told him Frank died so I could sit in this house. So I could drink this coffee. So I could teach my grandson how to throw a baseball, even if my shoulder wasn't what it used to be. Eli didn't interrupt. Didn't fidget. Didn't even blink too much. When I finished, he asked, "Did you ever tell anyone this before?" I shook my head. No one ever asked. He thought about that. Then said, "They're asking now." That night, David came home late. He stood in the doorway, saw the case on the table, and the open letter beside it. "Seriously?" he said, rubbing the back of his neck. "You're gonna do it? Speak in front of everyone?" I didn't answer right away. Then I looked at him and said, "I might not speak for long, but I think it's time I said something." He didn't argue. Didn't shrug. Just nodded, once, and left the room. It wasn't approval. But it wasn't resistance either. It was, maybe, understanding. That was enough for me. Later that evening, I walked out to the balcony. The tape on the flag Eli had hung was peeling at the corners. I pressed it back down. Looked out across the complex. There were now 7 flags. 7 windows with that familiar red, white, and blue. Not from a government order. Not from a social media trend. Just people watching, and choosing to remember. The next morning, Eli stood in front of my bedroom door, holding something behind his back. He said, "You're gonna need this if you're gonna speak." Then he smiled, and handed me my old army jacket. Ellipsis. I hadn't worn that jacket in over 3 decades. And somehow, it still fit. Not just on my shoulders, but on my soul. It smelled like cedar and dust and time. The patch on the sleeve had frayed a bit. The inside pocket still held a tiny slip of paper, an old gas station receipt from 1991. I held it between my fingers. The ink was so faded you could barely read the numbers. Didn't matter. It wasn't about the receipt. It was about the man who'd last worn it. And the question of whether that man still lived in me. Eli stood by the kitchen doorway, watching. His eyes wide, like he was seeing me for the first time. "You look serious," he said. "I am," I replied. Then I smiled, but I still remember how to wear it. We rode to the park in David's car. Eli in the backseat, humming something under his breath. David focused on the road, fingers drumming the steering wheel. The silence between us was tight. Not angry, just full. Like both of us were standing on opposite ends of a bridge that hadn't been walked in years. And neither one of us knew who'd take the first step. The parking lot was already half full when we arrived. Rows of folding chairs. Speakers on stands. A small podium with a flag draped across the front. Kids ran between trees with juice boxes. A woman set down a tray of cupcakes at the community table. Someone tested the microphone. I kept my distance at first. I wasn't ready to be seen. Then a voice behind me said, "Mr. Briggs, sir?" It was Lieutenant Chen. Young, upright, uniform crisp. He offered his hand. I shook it. His grip was firm, but his eyes said more than protocol. "Thank you for coming," he said. "You didn't have to." "Yes, I did," I said. He nodded, then stepped aside. People noticed. Some whispered. Some nodded. Some just looked, faces puzzled, curious, reverent. Eli walked beside me, chin high like he was guarding a secret. David followed quietly, hands in his pockets. When they called my name, I stood slow. The jacket felt heavy now. Not on my body, but in the moment. I walked to the mic. The wind tugged gently at the flag beside me. A soft ripple. I looked out at the crowd. No camera flashes. No chants. Just stillness. And I said, "My name is Walter Briggs. I didn't come here today to talk about war. Or medals. Or pain. I came here to talk about a flag. One small flag. The kind you find in a bin at the grocery store. I picked one up last week. I didn't expect it to mean anything to anyone but me. But something happened. Someone laughed. Someone else stood up. And it reminded me. I don't need people to know who I am. But if we forget the people who served, if we mock the things that mattered to them, then this country loses its compass. Respect isn't earned by shouting. It's held quietly, carried. And sometimes, it's passed down, from a grandfather to a boy with a roll of tape and a balcony." I paused. No applause. No phones lifted. Just quiet. The good kind. The kind that lets words breathe. Then I stepped back. Nodded. And walked away. Eli ran up and grabbed my hand. Held it tight. Didn't say anything. David met my eye. And for the first time in years, he said, "I'm proud of you, Dad." I nodded. Couldn't speak. My throat was too full of things that didn't need saying. That night, something unexpected happened. The cashier, the one from the store, sent a message. Ellipsis. It came through Facebook. One sentence. No emojis, no excuses. Just, "I think I understand now. Can I talk to you?" I stared at it for a long time. Didn't reply. Not because I was angry. I just didn't know what to say. It had been 8 days since that moment in the checkout line. 8 quiet days. Except they hadn't been quiet at all. Flags popped up around the neighborhood like flowers after the first spring rain. Big ones, small ones. One was made entirely out of red, white, and blue bottle caps, nailed to a wooden fence. Someone had painted, "Respect lives here," on the sidewalk outside the school. And yet, the video kept circling. People kept talking. And now, this. A message from the girl at the register. The one with the sarcastic laugh and the question she thought was a joke. I closed the laptop. Let it sit. That night, I went back to the box. The old one. The one that hadn't seen the light of day in decades. I pulled out the photo again. Frank was there, center. Smirking like he always did. One boot untied. I flipped it over. 4 names, scrawled in blue ink, barely legible. I whispered them. One by one. Not out of grief. But out of duty. The next morning, I wrote back. If you're serious, meet me at the diner near Main and 3rd. Noon. She replied 10 minutes later. I'll be there. I got there first. Ordered black coffee, like always. Waited in the booth by the window. The one with the ripped vinyl seat. At 12:07, she walked in. Alone. No makeup, hair down. No smug look on her face. Just nerves. She spotted me, hesitated, then walked over. "Mr. Briggs," she said, "thank you for agreeing to this." I nodded. Didn't offer a smile. Just motioned for her to sit. She did. Fiddled with a napkin. Didn't look me in the eye. "I didn't mean to insult you that day." She started. I don't know, being stupid, trying to be funny. I didn't think. That's the problem, I said. People don't think before they laugh. Before they assume. She went quiet. Cheeks red. Lips pressed tight. Then she said, "My dad served. I barely remember him. He died when I was little. I think I've spent most of my life trying not to feel anything about that. Not remembering felt easier. That hit harder than I expected." I took a sip of my coffee. Watched the cars roll by outside. "Running from memory doesn't erase it," I said. "It just pushes it down, until it snaps back louder." She nodded slowly. "I saw your speech. My roommate played it, twice. I cried both times, and I don't even know why." "Maybe you do," I said. She looked at me now. Really looked. "Why didn't you snap at me in the store? Why not call me out?" I shook my head. "Because I've lived long enough to know yelling doesn't teach anything. Silence can cut deeper." She blinked, fighting something back. Tears or shame, maybe both. Then she reached into her bag. Pulled out a small flag. Unfolded it gently. Set it on the table between us. "I bought this the next day," she said. "Haven't let go of it since." I looked at the flag. Then at her. And I said, "Then I guess you remember now." She nodded. No words. Just a quiet kind of peace settling between us. We sat there for a while, both watching that little flag. It didn't wave. Didn't move. But somehow, it felt like it had done its job. When I got home, there was another letter on the doormat. This one with handwriting I hadn't seen since 1975. Ellipsis. The envelope was yellowed and thin, like it had waited decades to be touched again. No return address. Just my name. In handwriting I recognized instantly. Claire. My wife. She'd passed in '03. But this letter. This had been written in 1975. The postmark said December 2nd. Same day I'd come home from my second tour. Same day I'd promised never to leave again. My hands trembled as I opened it. The paper inside was soft from age. Creased where it had been folded once, then kept folded forever. Walter. If you're reading this, it means I didn't find the right moment to say all the things spinning in my head while you were away. So I'm putting them here, on paper, where maybe they'll make more sense. I saw you walk through that door today. You didn't look like the same man. But I don't mean that in a bad way. You looked heavier, not your body, your eyes. You're carrying ghosts. I know. I can feel them when you hold me. But I want you to know something. You came home. You did what so many never could. And now, your fight is to live. To live kindly. To live present. To live like you believe you're still worthy of peace. You are, Walt. You always were. Love. Claire. I didn't realize I'd started crying until a drop hit the page. I sat down in the hallway. Right there on the floor. Back against the wall. Letter shaking in my hands. She'd written this and never given it to me. Maybe she thought she didn't need to. Maybe she thought she had time. Maybe she was waiting for me to be ready. And now, nearly 30 years after she was gone, I was finally reading the words she never got to say out loud. They hit harder than any battlefield. Because they were honest. And gentle. And forgiving in a way I hadn't been to myself in years. Later that night, I pulled out the box again. Not the memory box. The storage one I kept in the back of the closet. Full of old uniforms, clippings, one broken wristwatch from Korea. Buried under it all was a cassette tape. Labeled in her handwriting. For Eli, if he ever asks. I stared at it. I hadn't even remembered packing this. And now here it was. The only problem was, I didn't own a cassette player anymore. The next morning, I went to the thrift store down on Franklin. Dug through old electronics. Found a clunky black player that looked like it belonged in a 90s high school AV club. I brought it home. Popped in the tape. Pressed play. A soft hiss. Then her voice. "Hi there, sweetheart. If you're listening to this, then I'm not around to tell you in person. But you should know something about your grandfather. He won't tell you himself. That's just how he is. But he's a good man. A brave one. And more than that, he's kind. He taught me what it means to stay. To love someone who doesn't always love themselves. So if he ever seems quiet or heavy, just sit beside him. That's all he needs." The tape kept playing. But I couldn't listen. Not yet. I stopped it. Sat back. And realized something. The past wasn't knocking anymore. It had let itself in. And maybe that was okay. That weekend, Eli asked if we could take a trip, just the two of us. "Somewhere you haven't been in a while," he said, "somewhere important." Ellipsis. We left before dawn, just a duffel bag and an old road atlas between us. Eli insisted we go analog, no GPS, no phones. Said it felt more real. I didn't argue. He rode shotgun, legs curled under him, flipping pages like they were treasure maps. Every time the sun peeked over a ridge or through a fog bank, he'd whisper, "Look at that," like it was the first sunrise he'd ever seen. It reminded me of someone. Me. Before everything. We stopped for breakfast at a roadside diner with cracked leather booths and a jukebox that still took quarters. I had black coffee and corned beef hash. He ordered pancakes the size of hubcaps. We didn't talk much. Didn't need to. The silence between us wasn't empty anymore. It was filled with understanding. Around noon, the sign came into view. Fort Ashland, 2 miles. The trees grew thicker as we drove. Pines that had stood for longer than I'd been alive. They lined the road like sentinels, quiet and watching. We pulled into a gravel lot. There wasn't much left. Just a concrete foundation, half buried in weeds. The old barracks were gone. The flagpole was bent, rust streaked down the side. But the field was still there. Where we used to run drills. Where I took my first fall trying to impress a sergeant with legs like steel. Where Frank and I learned how to work together without speaking. I stepped out. Eli followed. He didn't ask questions. Just let me lead. We walked to the middle of the field. And I stopped. "This is it," I said. He looked around. "It's quiet. It used to be louder than hell," I said, almost laughing. Boots, shouting, engines, 1,000 heartbeats at once. I could still hear it. Not with my ears. With my bones. We sat in the grass. Eli pulled a sandwich from his bag and handed me half. Turkey and mustard. Simple. After a while, he asked, "What made you come here today?" I didn't answer right away. Then I said, "I think I needed to prove to myself that it was real. That we were real. That it wasn't just some dream or some photo in a dusty box." He nodded. Chewed thoughtfully. Then said, "You don't have to prove it. You lived it. And now you've passed it on." That hit harder than any salute. He reached into his backpack and pulled something out. A folded flag. The one from the store. The one he'd taped to the balcony. Edges now worn, corners slightly curled. He handed it to me. "I want you to plant it here," he said. "This is your ground." I stood. Walked to the edge of the concrete. Pressed the little flag into the earth. It wobbled in the breeze. Not strong. Not perfect. But upright. Still standing. Like me. On the drive back, Eli finally said it. "I told my history teacher about you. About the speech, the diner, everything. She wants you to come talk to our class." I didn't say yes. Didn't say no either. Just looked out the window and said, "Funny thing about stories. The ones we don't tell? They don't disappear. They just wait for someone brave enough to carry them." That night, I opened a drawer I hadn't touched in 20 years, and pulled out something that still smelled like smoke and red clay. Ellipsis. It was my old field journal. Pages brittle. Ink faded. But the truth still burned under every line. I'd tucked it away the year Claire passed. Couldn't bear to look at it after that. But now, sitting at my desk with Eli asleep upstairs, the house quiet, it felt right. I opened to the first page. The handwriting was younger, firmer. The words had weight, but also hope. Day 1, deployment 2, still feels like the first time. God help me, I just want to bring them all home this time. The entries weren't poetic. They were raw. Sometimes ugly. But always real. I flipped through. Frank's boots froze again. He laughed. I didn't. We watched the sun rise over the wire. I never knew quiet could feel like a scream. Saw a kid today who looked like Eli might someday. That hurt in a way bullets never could. Some pages had smears, mud, sweat, maybe tears. Others just had one word. Survived. Halfway through, I found a page I'd forgotten. Taped inside was a Polaroid. Faded and yellowed. Me, Claire, and baby David on my lap. 4th of July, 1976. A tiny flag in David's chubby hand. I stared at that picture. At the way Claire looked at me. At the way David laughed. And I realized something. Everything I'd ever fought for. Every mile, every bruise, every silence. Was for that moment. Not medals. Not speeches. Just a child laughing in peace. The next morning, I packed the journal in a small wooden box. Along with the flag Eli had given me. And Claire's cassette. I added a note. Asterisk, for Eli, when the time feels right. These aren't just things. They're reminders. Of where we come from. Of who we are. And why we keep going. I locked the box. Slid it under my bed. Later that week, I went to Eli's school. Told the story. Not the grand version. Not the newspaper headline version. Just the truth. A man, a flag, a laugh that stung. And a quiet that roared back. They listened. Not because they were told to. But because they felt it. Afterward, a girl in the front row raised her hand. "Do you think respect is something we've lost for good?" she asked. I thought about it. Then I said, "No, I think it's something we've just misplaced." But when one person stops and remembers, the rest tend to follow. Weeks passed. Then months. One evening, as I sat on the porch, Eli joined me. Didn't say anything. Just handed me a folded piece of paper. Inside was a short essay. Title: The Man Who Taught Me What the Flag Means. My name wasn't in it. But I was in every line. I folded it. Slipped it in my pocket. Right next to Claire's old letter. The breeze picked up. Soft. Steady. The little flag on our balcony rustled. Still standing. Still here. And I smiled. I don't need anyone to know who I am. But if this country ever forgets, we lose the map.